Unrest in Iran, the death of Michael Jackson, Al Franken wins his Senate seat. Big stories of the last week, but how did you first hear about them? Many people became aware through non-traditional methods. Blogs, MySpace, cell phones, and PDAs. What's going on? Now Facebook is changing the way we interact. But how accurate is the information we are getting in this 24-hour news cycle? Tonight we look deeper into the Twitter revolution. I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. Once was the time when we received our news by morning or evening newspaper, with the most important of the news warranting a special edition. Mass media brought us radio and TV and regular newscasts from the likes of Cronkite and Murrow. The 80s brought us the end of news departments as loss leaders, deregulation, and the 24-hour news cycle from cable news outlets. As technology marches on, the Internet gives us access to news from around the world in just a few computer keystrokes. Add to that handheld devices, and access is within reach of everyone at any given moment, to learn what's going on or to become the reporter themselves. From blogging to Twitter, from MySpace to Facebook, our access to current information is now instantaneous. But what happens to the information we receive when we no longer know the sources or reporters of these stories? Who is sharing this information? Has this rush to inform us actually left us less well-informed? Joining us for this discussion are Dave Fehling, reporter, KHOU, blogger Mike McGuff, responsible for designing Channel 13's social media presence, and radio host Michael Garfield, better known as the High-Tech Texan. Hello to all of you.
Hello. Good to be here.
First of all, when we talk about new media, and I'll start with you, High-Tech Texan, Michael, what are we talking about when we say new media?
Well, let me finish my tweet right here before I start this.
You really were doing that right now.
I really was. Ernie, it's almost about this. It's the devices that we have in our hand. It's the instantaneous delivery and simultaneous interaction of communication. I mean, for years we have grown up on television and radio by listening and watching and just reading the newspapers. But the fact is, new media now, it's we, as in the world, are able, simultaneously with gadgets all over our bodies now, we actually can send and update news and immediately go anywhere in the world.
If everyone can do this, and pretty much everyone is, aren't we getting an overload, though? Isn't it becoming harder to find, then, stories worth knowing about? Because, yes, I can tell you, 3 of my friends had a Subway sandwich for lunch today, and someone else had a flat tire, and someone else is painting the room blue. Where's the information that I need to get out of this, and how do I find that?
All over the world. I mean, really, as we've seen it right now. You opened the show. You talked about Michael Jackson's death. You talked about what's going on in Iran right now. Traditional news outlets, television, networks, sometimes they don't have the access and now the funding of going all around the world. But the fact is, everybody has the Internet at their hands, wired or wireless, and they can report from almost anywhere in the world.
Dave, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, no, I think it's a matter of distribution. And, of course, I have to think about what do I do here for a local audience in Houston, Texas, and how does this affect me? It's a different way to distribute what I do. But the rules for me as a journalist haven't changed because of new ways of distributing what I do. I still have to check out my sources. I still have to dig to find out what's new to add value to the stories that I do. And you bring up, as you started to mention, all those things about what we see coming from Iran. If I'm looking at some of that information, I have to start asking myself as a journalist, how do I know where this came from? Who is this person who claims to have seen whatever they claim to have seen? If I don't know them, I can't report that that's what's going on there without verifying it somehow.
Now, okay, Mike, you're blogging. You're either putting your own information out there or passing on information you have heard or seen or read from somewhere else. How are you verifying any of this?
Well, what I try to do is always go with traditional news sources. And I mean, sometimes I think you can make a good judge. I mean, I've worked as a journalist in television, so I think I'm a good judge as to what's accurate information. And I won't go with stuff that I just don't trust. I mean, obviously, anyone can publish anything on the Internet, so it is not all, good information that I should probably go with.
Now, we were talking, as we've been saying, about Iran. And the retweets. First of all, explain what tweeting is. I'm going to go back to you for this one. Explain tweeting or Twitter and explain what retweets are and what all this information is so that our audience that isn't familiar knows what we're talking about.
Nice and slow. Well, it's Twitter is one of the many social networking sites. You've heard of Facebook, Twitter. Those are probably the two big ones right now. I mean, we can go way back in time and talk MySpace, but that literally that was like so 20th century. I mean, it really was. Twitter, for the practicality use, it's a website, totally free to use, that anybody can get a free account. And what it does, it lets you update what you're doing, what news is going on, and in many cases, what you're eating and what you had for breakfast, and a lot of news that no one really wants to hear, in a box that only allows you up to about 140 characters. So you're going to have to be very concise and very tight before you're typing it. People follow you. You can go online. So I want to follow what Ernie does, and so I'm your follower. And as soon as you update what's going on, I can see that. And then now you're my friend. And people start creating all these friends and followers. One of the most noted ones, actually the number one celebrity in the world who has the most followers, believe it or not, is Ashton Kutcher. As of this taping, I just checked the stats. He has 2.5 million followers. Now, what is Ashton talking about? We don't know. We don't care. But you're seeing...
Well, 2.5 million people seem to care.
I guess so.
I don't know why.
What Demi Moore is doing, I'm
but
not
CNN, by comparison, has how many following them?
CNN also has just about 2 million followers. Now, what news organizations, and we talk traditional news organizations, we are seeing CNN and Fox and ABC and CBS, they're actually creating their own Twitter accounts. Now, these are established news organizations. There is a lot of trust behind this. They have Twitter accounts where they're actually putting breaking news out, and CNN's breaking news has about 2 million people right there. So that is really pretty much what the verb is, tweeting. You're not a Twitterer. No. You're tweeting when you quickly update. And so right now I just tweeted, if you will, and that's how people can follow you and know what's going on.
Okay, now a lot of stuff that came out of Iran had RT before it. Retweet. What is that?
Well, Mike, because he's Mr. Blogger over there with the RTs.
Okay.
Well, that means retweet, meaning that someone has posted that on Twitter, and then someone who followed them said, hey, that's interesting information. I want to send that out to my followers. So essentially, if Garf just sent out a tweet and I said, oh, I really like that information, I would put an RT at, Garf and his message, and I would be retweeting it. So all I'm doing is really copying him and sending it out myself.
So when I see one that has RT, and then the message, this has come through multiple people before it's gotten to me. At this point, I have no idea really where it started.
No, it's like a chain mail, chain email. We don't know where those come from. We get forwards all the time. It's kind of becomes unverifiable after a while.
Okay, so Dave, I've got RT, 6 people just killed in the city that I'm standing in.
Yeah, if I see that, I'm going to then start to make calls or whatever to find out, okay, what's going on there from some other source. That's just a tip. We've gotten tips for forever. This is nothing new. It's just a different way to get them now.
But now the tip isn't coming to you, though. It's coming to all of us.
But I'm not going to go on whatever broadcast, if I'm on one, necessarily just to say, well, according to Twitter, you're really taking a chance.
CNN is going to do that.
And
they just did with Michael Jackson.
And some have regretted that.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about something just happened.
It just came up very recently that CNN was taken to task over using as a source a tweet. And people said, you can't use that. That's not, you haven't sourced that out. And they said that they had, in fact, that was just one of many sources. But they used it as a source, apparently. At least that was what they were criticized for. That's what concerns a lot of journalists is you can't use that as a source, really, because, again, you have no idea where it came from.
But in the good old days, you got a tip, and then you went, looked into it, and then you delivered the information once you were satisfied with the validity of the story.
Right.
If all of the tips you have ever gotten in your career simply went on air or went out to the audience without having that stopgap with you, what's the danger there?
Oh, it's terrifying as a journalist because we want to make sure what we put on the air has been vetted. We're certain of it, or at least we have to say we heard this from a source, but we have to at least have some confidence that that person has some idea what they're talking about. So it's not changed at all, and that's where I like to always say that all this is great, and I like it, I use it, but if it doesn't add value to what a person, a viewer, a web surfer is doing, what's the point? And that's where I think this stuff gets challenged is what's the value that's been added?
The kindness at which you're saying. And Mike, I'm going to say, okay, so this is all going out there, that it's dangerous, that information is going out at this rapid level to so many people, to so hundreds of people. Ashton Kutcher decides that he's heard something that he thinks makes sense, sends it out without anybody checking it, and 2.5 million people now have that information. I can just imagine their retweets if they think it's worth something. So aren't we dealing with something very dangerous here?
Well, I think, yes, sometimes it can be that way, but overall, I think it's a good thing because we had a blackout in Iran. Twitter was really the only way we were getting any information. Would we rather have no idea what was going on, or at least we have somewhat of a clue? We might not know all the facts, but at least we're getting some reporting out there, and clearly it's helping the cause of the protesters.
Okay, but I'm going to take the devil's advocate side again and say, but we don't know that. I mean, I heard stories about how government officials in Iran were sending out tweets to get their side of the story out and pretending they were protesters, or sending tweets to protests. Is it the right term, tweets? Yeah. Sending tweets to other protesters saying, we're meeting at this place for a protest. The people would go there and then get arrested. So you don't know who's saying what.
Well,
is it even a source then?
I think you have to look at, consider the internet kind of like a mob in a sense, and I think the mob is smart. They're going to know the right places to go for that information. If they see a new Twitter account pop up spouting off some strange stuff, I don't think they're going to listen to it. They're going to figure out where the correct sources are, where they've always been going, where the trusted sources are, and that's where the information is going to come from. I think you have to give people the credit. I mean, that's really what the Internet's about is, there are smart people out there. I think they can figure it out for themselves.
It gives us all the ability, to self-publish. And I think when there's no question of who it's coming from, so, for example, Lance Armstrong. I was watching him race in the Giro d'Italia a few weeks ago in Italy. Lance is a very controversial figure in bicycle racing. There's all sorts of controversy about him. Well, he was able to use Twitter and was able to send out his tweets as he was in the race, and there were certain things being said about him in the mainstream publications. He went around all that. He didn't need to wait for them to interview him at the end of the race. He just got in and did his tweet, and anybody could sign up and understand what his thoughts were.
Yeah. Let me give you 2 quick points of this about the validation that we're seeing with sources like Twitter. Talk about the Iranian elections that happened just recently. It was such big news that the U.S. government even contacted Twitter Corporation in California. They were supposed to have scheduled maintenance to take down Twitter and stop their servers.
Right.
The U.S. government, the Obama administration, contacted Twitter. They said, do us a favor because this is the day before the elections. Do not take down the Twitter site because it is important for us to get our information out there and hear what's going on. So when you've got the President of the United States and his cabinet saying, you know what, this is how big this information source is, I'll tell you what, it's slowly becoming a little validation for this actually new technology.
Well, in addition to that, I mean, it was great that Iran was trying to block users in the country from being able to go on Facebook or Twitter, and those services told the users how to get around those blocks. So we still were getting some information out.
Now that's a question I'm going to ask you, Michael, about this. And you heard about what you're talking about with the government blocking. How can a government block the internet feed? How does that work technically?
Well, technology was, you think what happened in China. Remember the Olympics? For years, it's just, the world is going to come. We're going to cover the Olympics in Beijing, and we're going to open up the internet. And you kind of think, wasn't the internet actually open? Well, it's really not. Every computer and every time you get on the internet, there is a specific address. Let's just say it's not unlike your phone number or your cell phone number. And so we know anybody can find out where or what country you're coming from.
That's your IP address.
Through your IP address and those numbers that are hidden behind all the www dots. And so traffic can be known, okay, well, this is coming from China, this is coming from Israel, this is coming from Mexico. And countries can come in and say, they can almost, it's like a router, it's like a firewall. They can say, no, there is no outside information that's
How do they do that, though? And I don't want to get too technical. How do they block if your company is a service provider and your company is a service provider and your company is a service provider and I'm this country here and I've got a bunch of people in all different ones, how is the country blocking it once it's going to satellites and all of that? How do you interfere?
A lot of companies, like their television sources and their internet also, it comes through this government-ran, state-owned, let's just say, internet service provider. And so in China or Russia, specific TV, there's only one TV feed in some of these countries. If there's one pipeline coming in for the internet, that's where they can block it off. And these things continue to come down. They can just block almost any address.
And Google has come under fire for, I think, going along with some of the things that the Chinese government asked them to do. And people said, look, you can't do that. That's against the basic fairness of what we're trying to do with something like Google.
Yeah, China's too big of a market, so a lot of the companies, unfortunately, do go along with what the government does because they want to remain in China. I mean, that's billions of users right there. That would be hard for a company to turn down, all those users to go against the government.
Is there a way to be truly anonymous on the internet?
There actually is. No, there is. I mean, there's websites out there, and I mean, I can tell you, just to Google just anonymous IP addresses, where you can be in almost any country, and it will disguise your IP addresses. A lot of people do that to listen to online radio or watch TV right now. A lot of the United States feeds for even our radio programs or television stations, you're not allowed to go outside of the United States. But we have listeners from Australia to Mexico, all around the world. They just kind of block their IP address.
Is this all going to change? In time, is it just going to be global?
Well, I mean, it's right now it is global in some sense, but you have to consider how relatively new the internet is. I mean, listen, paper and radio have been around for, hundreds of years, Marconi. Television, as we know, has been around for 50 or 60 years. Just changed a few weeks ago with the new digital TV. But the internet, the World Wide Web, as we've known it, it's only been around, let's just say, since the mid-'90s in its mass form. It's a baby right now. There's really no governing body. There is no FCC who oversees the internet like it does the airwaves right now. And so there will be some changes, but with devices coming out like this, with the access, with everybody using it instantaneously, there's going to have to be some laws, and a lot of countries are still going to be very, very, scared to use a lot of this stuff.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about a different part of this that bothers me too. The rush to be first, especially in the news media. Now that is what you hang your hat on. We were the first to report this. We were the first to report that. How much are we losing in this rush to be first?
It's always the danger. I mean, it's been that way when television was able to go live from the scene. All those things increase the pressure on trying to be accurate, which we all want to be, and yet be the first. And this has only taken it up another big, big notch. And we're under tremendous pressure to be the first on the internet now, be the first that's got it tweeted or whatever. So that's the danger, and that's where you hope that the people in charge of these things, they're actually writing the script, getting it out there, have been grounded in the fundamentals of good journalism. It all gets back to good journalism. If that is taken away, then yes, you're going to have a very unreliable source of information out there, and people will eventually reject that. They will gravitate back towards the more established professional journalists who have codes of conduct and standards to use, and hopefully that they will not let people down. They will stay true to their craft.
Now, in all this that we've been talking about, we've mentioned, I don't know that we've even mentioned it yet, YouTube, and people posting their videos and all that information. And YouTube just has launched YouTube Reporters Center, which is where they have established journalists putting up video so that the audience knows that information at least comes from KTRK or Tom Brokaw, whatever. It's from established folks. So my question is, though, what makes someone an established journalist anymore? I'm going to start with you down there.
Well, I think those lines are starting to change quite a bit, actually, because we were talking before air about Perez Hilton. Perez Hilton was some guy who sat in a coffee shop with a laptop and started an empire. He's now on radio. He's now on television. He is now kind of the go-to guy for entertainment news. Is he a journalist? I think some people would say he is. Others would not. I mean, in the fact that Michael Jackson, after his death, TMZ had that an hour before everyone else. TMZ, is an entertainment blog. But the network newscast that night did not recognize them as a source. They recognized the LA Times. So
right.
There is going to be a battle between old and new media, no doubt. It's coming. It's already here.
I think the marketplace decides. If what you put out there does not have value and is proven wrong over and over, people will gravitate away from you, and they'll gravitate towards what will become the established journalists. And those sometimes will be established in unconventional ways.
Back in the day, you go to college and you get your Bachelor of Journalism degree, and that was really the only way you're going to be hired at established media. Nowadays, I very seriously doubt Perez Hilton has a Bachelor of Journalism degree, but the fact is he is probably more well-known, more established, and probably making more money than unbelievably amount of well-established journalists with a Bachelor of Journalism degree.
That's the thing. The industry used to choose its people by you moved up the ranks. Well, now you don't have to work for a TV station to be published, to have video. You can do it. So the onus now is really on the marketplace to decide whether you've got something to say.
So if enough people follow you, then you are worth speaking about.
It's like you have your own network. I mean, the fact is, you Channel 8 and Channel 11 and all our local stuff, you have built years and years of that brand. It's, 11 News, and we're the first with all this Doppler radar thing. You have to have multi-millions dollars worth of gear and switchers and radars and towers. Nowadays, you get a connection to the internet. Sometimes it's free when you don't go to a coffee shop. You've got 2.5 million people. It's a lot more viewers than I think even KTRK has right now.
Yeah. Well, okay, but then, and following off what you're saying, newspapers are all out there talking about, and we're all talking about the death of the newspaper. And my question is it really the death of the newspaper, or do they just have to change their delivery system? Isn't the only difference? You can still have your news organization researching, publishing. It's just instead of this coming out, it comes out here. So why is it the death of the newspaper?
It's the death of a business model, I think. They used to make so much money off of classified advertising. That's one of the biggest problems right now that newspapers face is the lack of that, because people don't need them anymore for that function. It's figuring out a way to make money by distributing news, and they're extraordinarily challenged right now because the old model's been taken away from them. It's not the death of the journalism, it's the death of the business side of it, I think.
And there's so much competition. I mean, look, we have bloggers now providing news. You know, newspapers didn't have that 20 years ago. There's more cable news channels now. There's even YouTube channels providing news. You know, Rocket Boom is a vodcast. That's a video podcast. So, you know, there's so much more competition that they have to fight now.
It's the news cycle. It's the 24/7 news cycle. Remember, a long time ago, I'll tell you what, it didn't happen until you woke up the next morning and you read it in the paper. The fact is, we knew what was going on in Iran. We knew what was happening with Michael Jackson seconds after it happened. There is no established time that you have to sit here at 5:30 and watch the opening national newscast. It is nonstop. And that's where I think print is another reason that it's slowly becoming that dinosaur, because you already know all the information by the time you wake up and read it in the morning.
Now, some of our older viewers, our more mature viewers, are sitting out there feeling left behind. Are they being left behind? How do they stay current? I bought my mom a laptop computer. She's still lost on how to get it going. And to me, it's like, it's so simple. Just turn it on and do that. Is this chunk of our generation, our population, being left behind, underinformed?
I think they can choose to be if they want. They can choose to be left behind, and they can still rely on their television, radio, the traditional sources. But I think just what you did is so key, and I know a number of people who are mature who amaze me at their savvy and how they have their email accounts, how they use the internet. So I think that it's a matter of personal choice if you want to participate in that. And I'll tell you, sometimes I think some people would just soon not know that much. You're happier that way.
Sometimes I don't want to know that much. First, I have the MySpace. And by the time I got up to speed on MySpace, everyone's like, well, MySpace is dead. It's at Facebook. So I get to Facebook, and now I'm keeping, oh, you're not Twittering? You're tweeting? You know, so now I'm there. Does it ever end? What are these systems, the platforms I should be on to make sure people know what's going on?
You may have this in some of your stats there. Isn't it that people that try Twitter, a third of them, I think, within the first couple of months no longer use it? And I think something like 90% of all blogs that are registered haven't been used in the last 6 months or something like that. I mean,
that's me again.
That is to say, these things come and they go. So who knows where it's going?
Mike, where are we looking for our most accurate information? Where are we going right now?
Well, I think one of the great things about the internet is that it can be personalized in the sense I can choose what news feeds come to me. There are now things called RSS feeds where you can actually...
Yeah, and I can't figure RSS out for... you're going to show me before you leave today.
Really simple syndication. That's what it stands for. Okay. Get it? That's RSS. Right. It's simpler.
We'll talk.
Okay.
I can choose the feeds that I want to see. If I want Channel 11's feed, if I want the High-Tech Texans feed, if I want Channel 8's feed, I can get those. Every time you all publish a story, I immediately get it. And that's what's changing the news business to a degree, that level of personalization, which, you know, you can argue is good or bad, because I might just want to subscribe to a certain political opinion and that's all I ever see from then on. But at the same time, you do get what you want.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring up, too. Do we lose the balance that comes with an established newscast?
Oh, I think we do. I mean, that's the thing. That's what has traditionally been our role is we're gatekeepers. We do decide what is important that day. And there's a good reason for that, because I don't want, as a viewer, to have to sift through all this information and figure out, is that really the true stuff coming from Iran, or is that not? That's what we're here for. That's what professional journalists are for. I tend to think that things are in a great state of flux right now, and that somehow, some way, people will always gravitate back towards that for the most part, because there's value in that. And that's where I get back to that, is where's the value come from?
So, a lesson to people out there. How do you stay well-balanced? How do you make sure you don't fall into the trap of, if I tend to be a conservative and I only read conservative information, that then I start to lose sight of the rest of the story, the balance in it? Is there something out there I can be doing better?
You know what, I think you go back to the traditional media. I say the traditional, let's just say, news gathering sources, the networks, the ABCs, the AP, the CBSs. the CNN, the Fox News. I mean, right now Fox News, maybe it leans a little right. CNN, maybe it leans a little left. It's they're, as we were talking about, they're the ones, those news directors, they're deciding what you're listening. But the fact is, if you use RSS and you know where to go, you become pretty much your own news director. And so if you want to try to stay fair and balanced, use several sources. And again, go to Twitter, go to Facebook, and because that's still where you are going to find where the CNN has their breaking news and where Fox has their breaking news. Still use the traditional sources, but it's the delivery method that you're still going to keep updated by having it delivered to your email or on that one web page that you're looking at.
Okay, before we go, just for yucks, I'm curious how each of you heard that Michael Jackson had passed away.
Let's see what I was doing. It was a combination of Facebook and Twitter. I was sitting that Thursday afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. All of a sudden, one came in, TMZ reporting, and then emails. The interesting thing, it's when Michael Jackson died, he almost took the internet down with it. The traffic that slowed down on the internet, because people now turn to that immediate source. They didn't want to wait to that 5:30 national newscast here in the Central Time Zone. They wanted immediate information. Right. If you try to get to that internet, everything was slowing to a standstill. You know what they had to do? They had to go back to the low-tech of turning on the television because CNN didn't slow down. The internet did.
Dave, real quick.
I think I was on vacation that day, and literally I was out doing whatever I was doing, and I think I literally watched it on the news that night when I got back in.
And Mike.
Traditional
Twitter. Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, thank you very much, and hopefully I'll keep up to speed with all of you as we move forward. Now, each week we invite you, here's where we go into our high-tech mode. We invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Simply click on the local program bar, pick Houston 8, and then you can join our online community. Read about the guests, learn more about the topics, share your thoughts and ideas, and even suggest questions that we might ask during upcoming episodes. Remember, information posted on our website may be used on air, so keep that in mind when submitting. And that does it for us tonight. Until next week, thank you for joining us. I'm Ernie Manous. Have a great week.